everybody, welcome back to Wireheads. This is part 2 of episode 15. If you're looking for part 1, that's going to be down in the description below. Talking about starting a campaign. I am leading the discussion on ending a campaign. Now, of course, with any campaigns, whether it be, a one-shot where it's done by the time you wrap up session after 3 or 4 hours, 5 hours of play, or a mission after 3 sessions, or hell, an epic campaign that's been going for like 3 or 4 years. I've been in one of those. And watching the end of the world and having to turn that around before dying off was quite the trick. Ending a campaign can be the most memorable, but also sometimes probably the most touching moments of any GM's time and players' time at the table. And you've seen it between Emmerron with the Inferno happening.
We dropped a nuke on Militech. It was great.
Where and then other times you have I haven't really had like a campaign where I've wiped out all the players, but more you look at the massive aftermath of what you've done to the world around you, such as like with my Cybernation Uncensored group, blowing out a Sagatari lab that was gonna be almost FBCs, but you just put on these goggles, put these tubes on, and you just live the rest of your life as an elf. They stopped that from happening, unfortunately for some people, I guess. But then you see like some of these other upcoming campaigns that we have coming to an end, which mine are coming up to an end soon. And I know, Emmerron, you're kind of coming up on the last leg of Neon Inferno Season 2.
Yeah, we've got like our last arc is pretty much starting right now. Will be as soon as we're done through the CMK, because we wanted to take a quick break to do that while it was brand new, so no one got spoiled unnecessarily. But yeah, that is coming up. That's kind of what we're starting as soon as Neon Inferno is properly back from this brief hiatus. But yeah, it's ending a campaign, I think, is, and I just said this to the Twitch audience, so I'll say it again. It is one of my favorite parts of a campaign is the end, because it really is something where you can just have the most wild things happen, and you get to pay off all of those cool moments that you didn't plan as a GM. Like, there are so many times in my Cyberpunk campaigns where I plan, I write my gig out and I'm like, all right, here's the gig, here's how it's going to work, here's the enemy, here's the problem. And then the players come up with some really novel solution. And maybe they turn that enemy into a friend, and I didn't account for that. I thought the guy'd be dead, and now they've somehow persuaded them over to their side, or at the very least that they've made them question what they were doing in a way that changes the dynamics. This is where you get to pay all of those really creative decisions and your own planning and pay all of that off at the very end of things and just do some wild out-of-pocket stuff with that.
Like, for example, Team Storm Chaser. Emmerron, I think you were there for the finale of Storm Chaser, or like
I was
tuned in, where these guys, not only did they fight and kill Warlock and the Pit and many other Maelstromers leading up to their assault on the Totentons, I decided, all right, I think they ended up offing Warlock a little easily. And here came Crusher, tearing out the top of Totentons. And I thought they were going to kill Crusher. I thought they were going to take his head. They were going to make it a trophy. And Storm Chaser surprised me. They are probably the most violent group of edge runners I have, by far. And they spared Night City's most wanted cyber psycho.
And that's the wild thing. It's like when your players do something like that, that's like, even in the finale, you're like, wow, that's really out of pocket. Like, Neon Inferno Season 1, this is the thing, I don't do PvP much at my table, unless you give me a very compelling reason why I should. And one of my players gave me such a reason at the end of Neon Inferno 1. So, the stage is, players have come into a nuke that was going to a defense convention that Militech was holding. Well, they heisted it. And because all they knew was that there was a ton of good military shit on there that someone didn't want getting into their hands. So they go with the Nomads, they heist it. Lo and behold, there's a nuke on board. And they're like, well, what do we do with this? And half of them, well, half the Nomads, I should say, were like, well, we could, you know, get rid of it, you know, take it off somewhere, get rid of it, forget it ever happened. The other side, which the players mostly agreed with, was like, yeah, because Militech's been causing us endless problems. Like, they were responsible for some things earlier in the campaign that were honestly pretty horrendous, like killing a ton of innocent civilians for what they perceived was some kind of slight. And so, yeah, they were like, we could just give them payback, make sure they could never do this to us ever again. And most of the players agreed with that. There was one player whose father was actually the big bad guy at the end of the campaign, or supposed to be, who did not agree with this. And she was like, on the side to me, messaged me and was like, so do you mind if I like take the nuke and try to like keep it from the players that want to do this thing and like run off into the sunset with it? I'm like, here's what we'll do. I will keep this private. You can, you know, you keep this private as well. We're not going to roll on it yet because I want to do it in front of the audience. But I have the series of checks and events in mind that'll play out if we do this, right? And none of them are going to take a ton of time. All of these are going to take really short, so you would do whatever you want with your free time, you know, during downtime and stuff like that. But when the time comes, we're going to roll all of these checks. And if enough of these come up successes that I will determine, then you will try. And the players have to come in and try and stop you. And she's like, bet, let's do that. And we did. And oh my God, was that finale so good because of it. So that's, your players will do things that surprise you. Because it's like, oh, well, my players have already nuked the city in one of my earlier campaigns. What's another nuke on the city? And this player was like, no, I don't want to do that again. I want to try and change that. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And it did lead to some really interesting interactions.
I mean, Neon Inferno Afterglow literally has probably caused one of the biggest power vacuums to happen in Night City's underworld economy. Literally.
Oh yeah.
What'd you say? Hundred terabytes of information gone, like dust in the wind. To who knows
stolen.
Where the fuck it went.
Mm-hmm.
Stolen, taken, deleted. It's gone. It is no longer in Kay's hands. And it's just like, oh my.
Oh my.
You know, and I suppose when we look at endings, usually for me, I like a nice, loud, epic ending to any campaign. So, like, you know, coming up, not next week, but in the following week, we're going to have literally between 8-bit having to literally fight God, like Deus Ex Machina, God in Machine. And then the rest of the party struggling with whatever the hell is crawling around that black site. Including, and I already tipped them off to it, I'm going to be breaking out the big toys for it. The very big toys. And it's not that I'm just that I'm just trying to kill someone. I hope I kill someone.
Yeah. That's kind of my perspective on finales, is like, if you're not pulling out all the stops and like making it a near certainty you're going to kill at least one player, are you really trying?
But at the same time, I also understand some players, some players are going to make it out.
Yep.
I don't think I think I've only ever had, like, during actual plays, I think I've only had one casualty so far. So, I know those are some fucking rookie numbers. Most of my deaths are at other tables.
I was like, I nearly TPK'd my whole party last season.
All right, roll end credits.
Only one starting player kept their character the whole way through. And it's the one that wanted to betray the party, which was wild.
Fitting.
That was true. Yeah, it was fitting. Absolutely was fitting. But yeah, I think that a TPK isn't off the table for finales.
Yeah.
I think TPKs are deeply on the table.
I think when you've hit a point where the party is, clearing hardened mini bosses with ease, like what happened today. But today was also a shit ton of prep on their end, paying off. I have created.
We came ready.
Well, Control Alt Delete. They're in for. Well, I'm not going to talk about what's all inside that thing. But why not include a monster as, a climax that is actually suggested in Artal's beat charts. And I thought, you know what, let's do a monster. So I made a monster. What if we took a clone, packed it full of cyberware, and just showed it the entire horrors of the world? It'll be fun.
So Diamond, what would you say are like the integral elements of the ending of a campaign? Like when you start thinking, let's start with signals. Like what is the signs of like you're getting close to the end of your campaign if you didn't have an ending in mind when you started?
For me, when I look at this, I look for three aspects. The players are hitting a point where Rent has become nothing more than. Like for me, if Rent is becoming nothing more than a drop in the bucket for them, okay. They have accumulated some great wealth. They're pulling off some really good jobs. It's time to give them the big job that's going to test their mettle if they get their place in the afterlife at a booth or on the menu. Another one is whatever the hell that has been causing all of their problems. In the case of Deus, that's finally come to light. And that is now the problem that is being dealt with. And last but not least, when I feel that the party has reached a point that I really cannot find any other things that will challenge them at that point, that it's time to wrap things up and start a new story.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a pretty good set of signals. I know the one I tend to use most often is the story is at a point where there's not a lot left to say with the elements in play. So whether I use the same characters in a new campaign or not, I'm calling the campaign done when the story no longer has anything new to say, right? Like if we're just retreading old ground again and again now, then it's like it's time to wrap this and find a new starting point, right? And that's pretty consistently like what I've done with every campaign in Red I've run so far. It's like when I'm like, okay, we've played this out, it's done, we're pretty much at the end here, because I can't think of any fresh ideas to tell with this group of players. Regardless of how challenged they are to like pay their rent or whatever, that is number one like the number one thing in my mind most of the time when I'm ending a campaign is like, we're at the end. Like we are definitely at the end. There's nothing else I can tell as a story here.
And when you are creating this final campaign or this final thing, unless they've done a really good job covering their tracks, that people know that they're not coming. If they know that the party is coming, pull out all the stops on all the weak points. Do it. They know it's coming. The party has a lot of long range. Well, don't be afraid to, add a few extra, Militech's got a few artillery batteries laying around. Sometimes you just gotta get rid of that building and the sniper that's on that building. All right.
Sometimes you just need to point it a direction and say, that direction, I don't like it. Please remove it from my sight.
And, honestly, when you think about it, remember, there are consequences after the finale. Yeah, found out, the big mission is over. The people who survived, well, as far as I look at it, with a certain with some corporations at play, they're not going to be happy with the fact that, every single attempt that they've had to, complete their task has been washed away by some edge runners. What are you going to do when the people that literally own the city are going to sniff you out and put you into a hole if it's the last thing that they do? Because somebody's not getting promoted, somebody's out of paycheck, and a lot of resources have been wasted.
Yep. Someone somewhere is going to be seriously pissed off about at least one of your players' characters still existing. And they want to make sure that that problem stops. And they're going to be the one to do it. Yeah.
And that's when, it's time for you to pack up, take the next, like as Vulpes Vox did at the end of Cyberpunk Shanghai, took the next Nomad train to Cancun, Mexico, and just left. And some folks took off for Canada, and others elsewhere. Even the Crystal Palace.
So then, what would you say are like the key elements of building that final push, right? So you've like had a long campaign, you've built these plot threads up, you've paid some of them off, and the ones that are left, how do you go about kind of organizing them into like a final narrative that culminates in like some big encounter or something like that?
The way I look at this, the way I've done it with many other campaigns. So let's say you have a barrel that's got a bunch of holes. Okay, these are the plot threads that the party comes in, fills in. That problem has been solved. That story's been complete. So the water level, and let's say water's getting pumped in through the bottom. The water's not going to go out those holes anymore that are lower on the barrel. And the further your party works up the story, up the barrel, that barrel's going to be hitting that boiling point. It's going to hit the top. It's going to hit the tipping point. That tipping point, basically all other things that the party has done has led to getting them to this spot. Everything that they've done has a reason for getting them here. And if they don't deal with putting the cap on this thing, it's going to dump out on them. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And as far as I see it, for example, with Law and Disorder, you guys have a War Games AI that has found that once again, another plan has failed. Let's try something even worse. And they're going to keep trying.
Yeah, the War Game scenario is pretty fun. I mean, I've always found Rogue AI such a fascinating element of Cyberpunk's universe. So like, that makes perfect sense for that to be like a campaign ending boss fight, right? Mm-hmm. It's the closest thing you have to fighting a god in like D&D within the realm of Cyberpunk. which is kind of fun, especially if you're a netrunner, because like that's your domain. That's where you just get to go fucking off and just do some crazy shit. So yeah, I am excited for that element. So now you've reached the point where you're at the final mission. Where do you begin building that or scaling that or whatever? You had mentioned before, like you pull out all the stops. So like break that down for me, kind of like what your thought process is related to that.
So the way I've done it with some campaigns is you have become, and usually like, you know, most campaigns spin down to there being like one major antagonist. You have been enough of a thorn in the side of that antagonist that finally this last arc, the antagonist is going to show their hand. Like the big one that has been letting everyone else handle the weight. They're going to show their hand. It is time for them to finally get involved because no one else is getting it done for them. So, you know, in this case, you are going to get personally attacked. Something is going to impact you directly. Like in the case of Larry, information got squeaked out that, you know, you were the one that got the growler. Guess who was trying to buy that information? Who wanted that information? The FIA wanted it. So guess what? Mr. K was trying to get it out of you so he could make a quick buck.
Boy, I love doing some kind of fucky shit and negotiating out from under pressure. That was beautiful. Love that. Love that so much. Like, so playing Larry's fun just because of how hard ass I can be to everyone around me. Just like, no, go fuck yourself. Get out from my sight. I don't need you here.
And in the case of Law and Disorder, you guys have been destroying asset after asset after asset of Deus. And finally, Deus has decided to leak, you know, as you guys encountered Maximilian. How do you think a little netrunner was able to get a hold of something as valuable as Maximilian? You think someone that smart was just going to just simply hand something out like that?
Right. No.
And now
never.
The bait was set. And, well, 8-Bit, you are 1 foot in the grave already.
I figure.
As I see it right now, until you can prove that you could get out the other end. And
I'll live. I'll do it.
Okay. And it's these things where basically the big problem has come to you. It is on your door, and if you don't do something about it, it's not going to come inside. It's going to burn you in your house.
Yep.
With the lemons.
Yep.
You're welcome.
With the lemons. With the lemons. Yeah, no, like, I think there is, let me see. So there's a question here that I'll add to our Q&A.
All right.
Just because that is, I like your question, Corn. Or Mark, let me just, I need to grab the QA sheet. But yeah.
Also, when players start hitting that cap, like where, you know, you start reaching, you know, for example, Netrunner rank 7, you like Netrunner rank 7, you're already like a very powerful Netrunner. You're just shy of a hardened boss when it comes to your equivalents. You've reached that point where further progression, it is really hard to find something to put between the players and their end goal that they can't just go and break and get through easily. Because I've seen high level techs at play where they can just invent their way around it, or all they gotta do is jury rig it enough to break it. You know, high level netrunners, like I've played at that high level before. It is really hard unless you tech upgrade the fuck out of everything to really put something in front of a netrunner that will cause them a lot of issues.
Yeah.
I mean, for the matter of like high-ranking solos, I mean, once you hit like 10 in your handgun skill or your shoulder arm skill, you kind of reach that cap.
Or evasion.
Oh gosh. You hit that cap, and it's just like how can my players actually continue to further benefit from continued play with these characters? And there's a possibility they could take another role, but why? They're so good at what they do. Why would they go and try to take up something else right away? And
yeah, I think it's also pretty telling, because this is going to lightly answer the question I just put in our Q&A, but I think it's telling that every boss character minus Crusher, and now Atom Smasher, because we have a stat sheet for him, every boss character in Danger Dossier that we've seen in a Cyberpunk RED game or book so far, their role rank caps out at 6. They don't typically go beyond 6. If they do, they are like genuinely a badass, and they are like actually terrifying, because then you get like Crusher, or you get Atom Smasher. Even I think like Johnny and Alt were like rank 7 in their respective roles. I don't think that they didn't go beyond that. So it's telling that like that is the cap of power for a lot of people, right? Like that is as good as you're getting. If you go beyond that, you are something else.
And then, we look at someone like Rex Royale, who's like rank 8. Rex pretty much rules one block. Like the whole border between the combat zone and the rebuilding area, that's one block. Pretty much that he said what he says goes there. And then we look at someone like Mr. K, who has, who can purchase anything money can buy and sell it to anyone, probably at, a nice markup as well. What do you do when you're at that rank? Like, you're set. Like, you're no longer riding the edge. You are now, unless you are getting put in front of suicide mission, again and again and again and again.
Hi, Adam. We see you. like that's literally Adam Smasher's lot in life at that point.
Yeah, that's literally Adam. That's the Morgan Blackhands out there. That's the like
the Shaitan. That's all these people that are like super high end. They've FBC'd out. They're grown the fuck up. Yeah, they've straight up got guns that could rival a small army. Like they are literally peak, and it's like, if that's where your players are at, I am so sorry. The interesting storytelling time is over, and the attempting to kill them time has started. Like that is where you've arrived at, which is where usually most campaigns will end. You give your best possible shot to kill them, and if they survive, even after that, then they've won. Like they've won. That is what winning Cyberpunk looks like. And you can have them, okay, your character walks off into the sunset, fulfilling all their goals, make a new character, and the fun begins again. Like that's, and honestly, as a player, that's one of my favorite moments, is like I get to retire the old sheet and start up a new one, and like try a new character concept that I'd never thought of before. So players, if you're hearing me say this and be like, no, my character that I've spent 30 gigs with, like I can't do that. I can't get rid of them. It's like, I'm sorry. There will come a time where that character will go. They will sail into the sunset. It will happen. One way or another, it will happen. When it happens, you get to tell a whole new story. And I promise you, that's some of the most fun you'll ever have with a game, is like going back to the drawing board after your first character, understanding the right things you did and the wrong things you did, and making that character that succeeds them is like peak. It's so good.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to come into the game with a better understanding as a player for the world, its challenges, and like what a character should be good at. And you'll get to build this new character with all of that in mind.
Now, Joe, if you're listening, I don't mean to throw you directly under the bus here on this one, okay?
No, Joe threw the bus. That's what Joe
Fair
does.
enough. But Joe, Bold Cup of Joe. They have always done martial combat with linear frame and high evasion. Until, well, actually, no, never mind. They also did linear frame with that one as well. Never mind. All right. So some of y'all, you have what's comfortable in your wheelhouse. If that's what you want to run with, great. Figure out how you can break it even further. But do understand, there is a point where, you know, you're going to get predictable enough. We're going to know what it's going to take to, you know, shut down that build.
Yep.
Look, all it took is me throwing one EMP grenade that you know, just happened to hit the right way. And I shut down someone who was solely reliant on their linear frame for damage. And they forgot to upgrade their cyber tech. Yeah.
Yep.
Good shit right there. Basically, and you know, you'll learn after the first campaign, you know, that anti-smog breathing mask that's like $20. That's the best $20 you'll ever spend.
Or nasal
filters, yeah, and toxin binders. Gosh, and you know, you'll see that, you know, there's some stuff that I recommend. Like, I always tend to start my characters with a heavy pistol, so that way they have some form of sidearm that they can tuck away, even if it's not their strong suit. And when you end a campaign, you can look back on what you did and then start a new one, of course.
Yep.
With that past experience in mind. Don't take into account everything that your GM has thrown at you currently, because things can always change. You know,
your GM gets smarter too. Yeah. That's the other thing. Your GM is learning as rapidly as you are, and they are beginning to see things that work, and they also see the things that didn't work against your last character, but could very well work again against a future character. Because trust me, we're cooking all the time when it comes to stuff like that.
I've had players just be like, well, why does that security operative have a standard quality assault rifle? Don't they only have poor quality? I'm like, no, not these guys.
This one's corporation actually cares about their security. So they invested the extra 400 eddies.
It's just like, you know, unlike Continental Brands, this is the Lazarus Group you're dealing with. who's protecting the executive zone.
Right.
You're just lucky I didn't give them excellent quality out the gate.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the thing. Sometimes they're like hardening an enemy squad because your players already know out the gate like how good they are. It's like, all right, cool. You guys get to play on hard mode. Like, that is pretty much what that turns into. And
also at the same time, like, not every encounter is going to be, everything's going to be difficult to kill the next time around. Sometimes you're going to walk into a neighborhood and you're going to catch a booster ganger who's been causing you some trouble, and they are nothing more than just standard booster ganger. That's it. That's all you get out of them. They are standard booster ganger. You are rank 7. They shat in the wrong, in the wrong person's food, pretty much.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something where, like, my favorite part about ending a campaign is giving everyone time to really wrap up the things that matter in their life path, and then give them a challenge to, like, say, okay, how do you achieve your life goal? Whatever that life goal is in your life path, this is now the time where that entry becomes pointedly important. Because, like, this next gig should attempt to solve that for you. Or at the very least, allow you the means that solving this is trivial, right? Like, it gives you the answer on a silver platter, whether that's resources or reputation or money, whatever. You know, you got people, you got power, you've got something that lets you achieve whatever that life goal was for your character, in whatever form it takes. And I think that is I think one of the other really cool things about GMing the end of a campaign is you get to say, okay, what mattered to this player's character, and why does that get solved here? How does that get solved here? Why is this still important to them after all these we're on Neon Inferno, what? I think we're episode 20 when we come back for season 2. So after 25 sessions of Neon Inferno this season, with some of these characters having been here the whole time, how is their life goal still relevant this many sessions in? And what are we doing to solve for that? Because that's the solve for X of a campaign is solve for your players' life goals. And that's the fun part is you create a challenge that tries to do that.
I suppose alongside those life goals, and I've after reading it through it and found that this is something I really would like to take a note out of. I'd like to take a note out of Blade Runner's themes. And at the end of all this, are you still you?
Yeah.
Are you still the same person that walked out of that cargo container, 25 sessions ago? Or did something click? Did something change? Do you feel good about what you did? These are questions that, you're staring at the bottom of your glass after finishing a job and deciding, could I have done better? Did I do worse things? Could I have saved someone? And sometimes when everyone kind of survives the final gig, there are still things that will be left to haunt that'll be left to haunt these players afterwards. That sometimes at the end of a campaign, unanswered questions can be actually kind of good.
Even if they survived physically, they don't always survive spiritually. I know there were characters that when they came to the very end of some of the campaigns I played, there was one in particular at the end of the very first campaign I played, and I think I may have talked about it. I think I've talked about it on my channel before, but I don't know if I've talked about it here on the podcast. One of my players' characters chose to off themselves after the end of the last session because they couldn't bring themselves to grapple with what they just did. The idea of ending a ton of people's lives sounds so simple when you present it to them, and when you present it as this is needed, and then when they found out they were duped at the end and that all those deaths are still going to be on them at the end of the day, it was their hand that caused it, they did not like that, and they just said, I'm out, I'm done. And yeah, that's how that ended. And it was just that shouldn't be off the table, by the way, for a player's character to say yeah, I can't grapple with who I've become, because what I've become is something that my former self would have hated. It's that old saying about you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become a monster that you hunted. It's good luck.
Oh yeah. Well, Dia, she started off no chrome, literally freshly into a campaign that ended up becoming Tales of the Red campaign. 8 humanity or 8 empathy, or 7 or 8 empathy, very high humanity, very able to connect with people. And by the time we got done with one red night, I left with 10 humanity, 1 empathy, and 10 hit points. Or was it? Yeah, I think it was 10 hit points left. And the rest of the party was where are you going? Fuck this. Fuck you. Fuck all of you. I'm leaving. Taking the spoils and then just fucking off to wherever it may be, when originally, her thing was she would always be there for her crew. That wasn't her crew anymore. She'd been through so many different other edge runners. And I gotta say, it's probably the same went for Virgil, from the stories that you've told of Virgil.
Virgil's very different, actually. Because one of the people has died, but the media is still alive. I mean, and my family still has to be freed. That's Phantom's current campaign. Like, he just made a joke in my chat not long ago. But I was like, oh, maybe I should take Mark's advice and kill all of you. And it's like, we'll talk about that. And I meant more in this segment, we'll talk about that. Because I'm like, how on or off the table should killing, going in, preparing for a TPK with that final encounter or whatever, how prepared should you be as a GM to do that to your players? Or how viable, I suppose, an option is that as a final session?
I suppose it really depends, because sometimes, you have that situation where it's, you fuck off when you're weak, and then, 20 sessions later, you've become this hulking monster. And, whoever's running that jail probably won't be ready for what's about to hit them. Or those nomads that one of the other members is a part of, was a part of, is not going to be ready for the skills attained by the last many sessions. And I suppose one of the other things that I've looked at when ending a campaign, even if they do win, everything has a cost.
Yeah.
Team Exotic, the sadly unrecorded group that I had broadcasted way early on, lost their homes. They had to leave Night City. They could not stay any longer. I've had another group where they say, they got their big payday. They made their big score. They lost a very dear friend of theirs in the process, though. And no win should be clean. There should always be something that's just makes that victory taste a little sour.
Yeah. No, that's entirely fair.
I mean,
go ahead.
What you said, with Neon Inferno, and with with the one that was trying to get away with the nuke,
Persephone. Yeah.
Persephone, her ending, it was very much, what kind of ending is this? And it's rough when you see stuff like that.
Yep. Well, and it's and you begin to understand those moments, what really mattered to the person on the other end. And it really does, I think, force the players through their characters to kind of reckon with some really hard truths about reality when it's presented to you that way. And yeah, I think that's more than anything. I think that the final session in a campaign should force you toe to toe with some things that are really, really difficult, both emotionally and just straight up in terms of the fight you fight is going to be a difficult one. It's not going to be an easy thing to win. If you win, you're not the same person that you went into this session or even the campaign with. You've fundamentally changed as a person, right? You become more desperate. You become more aggressive. You become less empathetic. The world has shook you, and you, by consequence, have shaken the world back. It is like a tit for tat. I think it's really good to look at like David Martinez and kind of his final stand in Edge Runners when we talk about that, because it is like so cyberpunk, like at its very core, to see the way that ended. And that is how your final gig should look like. If it's not something on that scale or similar, it's like that's what the ideal should be, is somewhere up in that, where it's like you're going up against a mega corporation. Mega corporation recognizes this and would like you to kindly fuck off like the little ants you are, and they will squash you like those same ants if you don't. And they're going to pull out every fucking gun in their arsenal. Every one of their top members, they're all going to be there. They're all going to try and come down on you like the 10-ton hammer they are. And if you don't get out of the way or somehow defeat it, you will be squashed. That is the way of it. There is no avoiding it.
I suppose another thing that I look at here when we do endings. Tough choices. We've talked about them before. Now this wasn't so much at the end of a campaign, but at the end of one of the missions in Tales of the Red. Right before the last mission in Tales of the Red. You are posed with a very difficult decision. Now there's a way to get like really good endings out of it, but it's very hard to do. And the I've put decisions like this in front of my players before, where they have to decide between two things and decide which one's more important to them. And they hate it. They love it, but they hate it when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Do you choose between the person that's paying you, or between someone who doesn't deserve what's about to happen to them? And it can really pull on people who have high empathy. It can really pull on them really badly.
I mean, even the ones with low empathy, it turns into have you fallen so far that you'd compromise your morals for a paycheck? Is that how far you've gone? Mm-hmm. And sometimes the answer is yes. That, I think, is more like in line with the sorts of characters like we're playing in Phantom's campaign, is like, how far do you go, right, to achieve your goals? Are the goals worth achieving if you have to give all of yourself up to achieve them? And there's plenty of times where the answer to that is yes, but there's also a line where you have to answer no. And that's the really, like, that's where it gets interesting. That is where I think, like, the final gig or the final few should force your characters into those circumstances. And, like, really ask those questions in the most direct and, like, magnitudinous way possible. Should be big, bombastic, and ask it very blatantly to your character. Like, do you like who you are? Are you proud of what you've accomplished? Are you going to go farther to still accomplish it?
And I suppose another good one, and I know this was more from a Blade Runner campaign, but you talked about it from your personal case that you ran, where I think it was Maya had to make a choice, and it was a tough one. This was like
halfway through the case that this happened, okay. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it probably led to what the end of that case was going to unfold into.
Yep. It fell apart quick.
I suppose one of the other ways I've ended a campaign before, it was a short one, but these guys had to decide because they had finally come up on the lair of a bozo that they'd been hunting down. And you know, their jokes are awfully funny. So,
Nyla would agree if you were here in the audience. I don't know if he is or not.
You come into a room, and there's a nice thick wall of like bank bulletproof glass. Okay, and on the other side of that wall, you have best friends. And we get to play a game of decisions. You guys get to walk out of here with your own lives. And I'll come out. We can have our little fight. You can get paid. Or your friends die and you take the money I'm about to offer you. I had one person take the money.
Ooh.
And everybody, and what made it even worse, and this was how I was closing it out. He said that everyone would die if the money was taken. The money was taken, and of course, everyone on the other side of the room, even the best friends that weren't related to the solo who took the money, killed. All of them. In a gory, horrific way. A lot of humanity loss happened that day. And I had to check in with everyone, make sure everyone was okay, but it seems like one of these players did not want to play with that solo anymore after that one.
Understandable. I mean, that is literally the worst kind of radical element to have in a group. Like, and I don't mean this as like players to players, but like straight up, like, again, this is one of those things that can bleed out into play groups, is when something happens on table like that. That is like, wow, holy shit, why did you do that? That is like actually terrifyingly, like, that is just brutal. And it like is harmful. Man, like I wouldn't want to play in that campaign. Probably that'd be my fuck it, I'm out moment, you know. Well, as a character, not necessarily as a player. Like I might bring in a new character, but like as a character in a setting like that, I'd be like, no, I'm not working with you again. Absolutely not. Not after today.
And you know, I kept kept it down to the word that if the money was taken, everyone would die. And the fixer picked up on that, and so it was just like, look, each of us are gonna walk away with 4,000 eddies instead of 2,000 eddies. Fuck it. These guys keep coming and asking us for shit. Solo
they listen to that intrusive thought. Holy shit.
Solo was running on one empathy, and he was.
That's honestly good role play. That's good role play. That's the thing. I can't be mad as long as it's done in good faith and the character is true to who they would be. You know, like, but the good faith part of that is incredibly important in situations like that. Like, if you have a player who acts in bad faith knowing that this could happen, that's probably the most toxic thing to have in a play group. That's where people will just say, if they're playing, I won't play.
Yeah. And I've had to remove some players from tables because of bad faith calls where it's like, sure, you could go play your own solo RPG and, you know, just choose those decisions because you know it'll give you the best benefit.
Right.
Sure, cool. Play that as you wish. But if you choose to, and that's something else with endings. If you choose at an ending, and I put PvP on the table, if something like this comes up where you are going to intervene in a way that is against the rest of the players at the end of this campaign, and the players feel that this is a problem that needs to now get dealt with, is a problem that now needs to get dealt with. And I will always ask before PvP goes online, is everyone cool with this? Because if not, we will walk back that decision.
Yeah. It involves, it has to involve informed consent. And if you know your play group is not one that does well with that, do not maybe put them in that quite that heavy of a position where you know you'd be baiting them into it potentially. That would be like my advice to GMs is like, you control what happens to a large extent, or what is on the table in terms of threats to your play group. This is where lines and veils really, I think, can get to shine as a safety tool, because it's like, if your players are really against internal conflict in their group, they will let you know that up front. And if they do write that down, even if they don't present it as like a, because like I know I played a lot of tables where lines and veils were literally like, no, like I'm good with most things, man. And then something like that happens and they realize, oh, or maybe they don't know it, or maybe they knew it before, right? They knew it somewhere along the road, and they mentioned like, I really don't want to have us fighting that way. And you realize like they may not have said that's a line for me, but they've expressed it in other language, and so you can make a note on your lines and veils sheet like that's a line for them. Don't cross that line. You know, plan around not using that as a incentive for them in one way or another, or a negative incentive.
So, I suppose just to wrap this up, when you are ending a campaign, there's a few things that you should look for. And of course, like what we just covered, make sure it is done in a safe way that follows, you know, that is comfortable for all players. The most memorable endings tend to be ones that everyone is having a great time at, and it follows, you know, the code of conduct all the way through. Next up, of course, make this epic. Make it big. All the stops. Pull all the damn dirty tricks you have out of the GM's toolbox. All right, like, listen up, you primitive screwheads. Check that book out. I know it's for Cyberpunk 2020, but that book's got some good shit in it.
The advice is eternal. Like, truly, that book has some of the best advice for GMs, just full stop, and it's so good.
Like, you know, don't be afraid to plant some extra landmines on the floor. Don't be afraid to use shock walls. Use them. That's what they're there for. They are there for you to beat the crap out of these guys in this finale. Throw an FBC, throw an 18 Dragoon at them with a reflex coprocessor. You know I will.
At the end of the last arc, I threw 2 FBCs at my party that could dodge bullets. They killed them both.
And, you know, for mine, there's one. It's going to have Metal Gear on it. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be a fun time. And oh boy, I can't wait.
Oh, Phantom just pointed out that there's an audiobook version of Listen Up that is narrated by Mike Pondsmith.
Look, I can't.
Oh boy, I might need to listen to that just to hear Mike talk about those things.
Look, I don't know if I can listen to it. There's something about Mike Pondsmith's voice. I might be doing the big honk shoe after a bit. Okay.
To be fair, nice. He has a very soothing. He has a very soothing voice. Yeah.
And of course, you know, make it personal to the point that if the players don't deal with this, it is the cards fold, the chips fall, the curtain is drawn on them for good. Make it very much known that, hey, this is it. You solve this problem, you are in the clear. You don't deal with this problem, everything you love and everything that you stand for, you might as well kiss it and your ass goodbye. And last but not least, when it comes to a good ending, a memorable ending, because you know, bad endings happen in Cyberpunk. There's no good endings in Cyberpunk. A memorable ending in Cyberpunk. Make sure that there is always a loss somewhere in the midst of this. Now, if there's a chance that they have cleared it all, there's a clean breakaway, someone's still going to be upset. Somebody's going to want them dead. It's always going to come back to bite them. And, you know, afterwards, decisions have to be made. Where are you running to next?
Mm-hmm.
And, oh goodness. Trying to think what other things I have off the top of my head for ending a campaign. That is the main things that I can think of. Keep it personal with them. Make sure it's safe. And also, don't be afraid to make it very tough on them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Make it so they have to play with every mechanic that you put at their feet and think outside the box all the same. And they have to throw their fiance out the window because they're trying to kill them.
All right.
That's what I did. It was really good.
I think on that note, of course, we have question time up here, but just in case, so that way I don't forget. Of course, if you're looking for part 1, it's down in the description. I want to thank you all so much for coming and checking us out so far. We're gonna get on with question time. If you guys have questions, send your questions in, whether it be on Spotify, here in the Twitch chat, or at Wireheads pod at googlegroups.com. That's Wireheads pod at googlegroups.com. Yes. I can English. Yes.
She can, in fact, speak. You could also put it in the YouTube comments. If we see a question down there, if we don't respond to it with another comment, we'll typically, at least for me, I'll comment, like, we'll cover this in the Q&A.
Also,
like,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, because usually, I mean, like, if it's something that takes longer than a few words for me to type out, I'd rather we have the time to talk about it. So that way it's not just me giving my opinion or Sammy giving hers. Like, we want to be able to present two perspectives to the question if it's something that takes that many words.
Also, by the way, to the person that asked about what tech I use to run my model, VC face, use VRMs. So that's it. That's a nice little tidbit there. But I think it is Q&A time.
Beautiful.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the first one is, are there any good gigs, scream sheets, or etc. from all the 2020 stuff that might be able to run in Red?
This is gonna be in your ballpark specifically. I haven't really dug that hard into 2020.
Thanks.
I mean, from what I've seen, Tales of the Forlorn Hope's got some good gigs in there for it, but you're gonna have to make it more relevant to the times.
Yeah, so I would say 2020 I use a lot for information. So I don't use it as much to like run a gig. I use it more to inform the world, because a lot of the groups that are mentioned in a 2020 source book somewhere, like Neo Tribes is one that comes right to mind. Neo Tribes talks about all the nomad families, and as of the time of the Red, we know pretty much all of those still exist because they're just very big and they all have a purpose. How they evolved beyond that, we know by the time of the 70s, the backers have kind of left, right? The backers are gone. They've joined Snake Nation. And we know the Aldecaldos are on the back foot. And we know to a certain extent the Thelos nomads are less in the picture. They've kind of been subsumed by Meta, who also owns DTR. So like that kind of all evolves. But in the time of the Red, things from the 20s are still relatively stable, because at least for the nomads, all of them are very much involved in the movement of the world and its goods and all of that. So Neo Tribes is really good. That's one that I use quite regularly for nomad lore, because I think that they play way too important an element in Night City and the general world of the time of the Red to not think about them quite a bit. Another book that I've found very recently, actually, that is very good for character stuff is Edgerunners Incorporated. It's kind of like Danger Girl Dossier for the 2020s, but it's got a lot of characters in there that some of which make an appearance in Red, and I think character biographies are really helpful. It's hard to mimic the system perfectly for stuff like full missions, just because some of the systems like net running work so differently that it's like they don't line up great. And even the systems that are closer, the way DVs and challenges were valued, or the level of someone who can kind of deal with a certain level of challenge, some of that is shifted around a little bit because of the fact that Red uses cap 8 stat for its skills and things, while 2020 used cap 10 stat. So it's kind of like everything is a little wonky because Red's high numbers are going to look a little less than 2020's high numbers. 2020 also had layered armor. So SP 30 and 40 things were not impossible in 2020 at all. But in Red, they're like, you will never see something above SP 18. I guarantee it.
Well, SP 19 if you upgrade that Metal Gear.
Even then, you're most likely the tech upgrades done to that Metal Gear are going to be for something else. They're not.
Bring it down.
I haven't seen a single. Right. Any stat blocks we've seen printed, the highest we've seen the armor go is 18. That is the highest SP we have seen. And I don't know that there's much a point in improving the SP at that point. Because, like, what are we doing? If 18 wasn't enough, you're stopping any kind of handgun at that point. You're stopping most guns that can, like, auto fire, unless they're auto firing with a multiplier of 4 or better. Like, you're just stopping just a ton of stuff. Like, the odds that something is going to get through and do damage to you with SP 18 is, like, so low. There's very few things that can do it.
I suppose one of the other books that I have taken into consideration when I did Cyberpunk Shanghai, and I also looked at like how the world was looking at this point in time, was Pacific Rim, which kind of, if you want to do stuff that's like over often other parts of the world, that's a way to do it. Which it was nice having that as a resource. Another book that is useful for for your campaign when you are looking at life in the old world in the hot zone is Corporate Report. Surprisingly, you find some interesting information on the corps at that time. And
this one,
the Night City guidebook.
This thing is so good. The Night City source book. If you're looking for the way that the city was in the time of the 20s, like, this book is so fucking important. And I think like most of the environment source books for like different regions around the world, like Eurosource, what was it? It's like Eurosource. There's one for the Middle East. There's Pacific Rim, which is for East Asia.
A guide to the UK.
Guide to the UK. There's Deep Space, which talks a little bit about high riders and things like that. What else? I'm trying to think. I don't think that there was, if there is a source book for Central America, I don't know the title of it. Like South and Central America.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was one because of the Brushfire Wars.
Let me look up, because I didn't look on Artel's websites. Because for those of you who don't know, Artel still makes a fair number of these physical books. And the few that they don't, I believe you can get print to order on DriveThruRPG. So let me see real quick for Cyberpunk, because I'm looking right now. Going through this real quick. So there's Eurosource Plus. I believe Euro Tour. What is Euro Tour by comparison?
I wonder if it's like different parts of the EU.
That's an adventure book. Euro Tour is an adventure book. That's why. Yeah. Oh, here's a set we haven't talked about yet. The Firestorm series. So Firestorm, Shockwave, and Stormfront. Those actually talk about the Fourth Corporate War in detail. So if you want to learn stuff about the Fourth Corporate War, the Firestorm books are both incredibly, incredibly good to have. And if you want to see like all the ways that the fall of Arasaka Tower could have gone down, like those will walk you through it. If you want to go through the effort of like converting them, we know enough about some of the characters in it and what they would equate to in Time of the Red to like get an approximation. So I might suggest that. Home of the Brave is the US based one, I believe.
Yep.
Let's see, because actually I'm curious if Home of the Brave might encompass some of the other parts of America. Fall of America, New America, the government, armed forces, State of the Union. Yeah, so it's just for America. It's not, none of its periphery nations. Let me see, live and direct. This was what? Oh, that's media. All right, so that's all the media book stuff.
Which, yeah, there are like source books for specific roles as well, like Wildside for fixers.
Protect and Serve for lawmen.
I guess one of the other things out there is Chromebook, because, you know, we got Black Chrome. And surprisingly, some of the tech that's pulled from like the 12 Days books that we've had so far is pulled from Chromebook and some of the other books over there.
They pulled stuff out of Protect and Serve, I know, as a specific example. Yeah.
And
yeah, no, the Chromebooks are insane, by the way. Like, that's something where, like, Diamond's right. Like, if you look at the 12 Days DLCs we've gotten so far for Cyber Miss, Gear Miss, and Gun Miss, pretty much all of that was stuff ripped out of the 2020 Chromebooks for the most part, with some added stuff from others. But it's all of it is 2020 gear that's been modernized. So that's definitely something that, like, if you're looking for something from 2020, start there with those, I think. And if it's still not there, the thing you're looking for, go and like maybe look through the old Chromebooks and stuff. But yeah, I think that those are the only setting books. It's Eurosource, Home of the Brave, Pacific Rim, and I believe that is
Neo Africa.
and Rough Guide. Is Neo Africa a?
I thought Africa had a source book. In
Neo Tribes isn't a source book so much for that. That's just nomad clans. But yeah, there's because I'm looking at their whole like all the books still for sale today, and yeah, I don't see anything. Like there's a companion to When Gravity Falls, but I think that that's more of a companion for another franchise. Unless, let me see. Yeah, because then, yeah, and then Wild Side, like you said, is just fixer stuff. That's not like a regional source book or anything. So yeah, I don't think one exists for Africa, at least not that they are selling on their website, because that's where I'm pulling these from. So maybe they sold one at one point and they just aren't anymore, but that would be a little weird. Usually a lot of these source books they keep around for some time. So yeah, but suffice it to say, there's a lot of good stuff if you read through 2020. Even the core rulebook of 2020, just like Red's, has a lot of information about stuff around the world. And if you compare Red's core rulebook in terms of the stories it talks about for like what's going on in other parts of the world, you can line that up with stuff from 2020, and you'll get a pretty good idea about what's going on. And Diamond Deep Space might cover some of the state of modern Africa in the 2020s because high riders are a big part of space.
It also looks like Wildside and Eurosource lightly touches on Africa as well, just because you know we got the Mediterranean separating like Southern Europe and Northern Africa.
Northern Africa, yeah, it makes sense.
All right,
yeah.
Now we got one other question. How do you reckon with the fact that PCs may have not have improved their role, but have improved their skills and are capable of winning the fights they take? Well,
yeah. So this was asked like in the context of like when you get to the end of a campaign, and like your solo isn't more than maybe rank 5, but like there's still, because of they have bumped their skill bases to like 16 plus, and they're able to like contend with that giant thing you've thrown at them. Like, how do you meet that out, that like you're a badass solo but your solo rank is low by comparison to like rank 8 where like Crusher is, or 9 where Smasher is?
oh, well, all right. So I think I could see where this question's coming from, but in Cyberpunk RED, this being a much more skill-based RPG compared to a class-based RPG like D&D or Pathfinder, I don't know if there's really any issue with your solo being so low of rank, besides the fact, or like some of your other members being so low in their rank, besides the fact they're missing out on such important role abilities that they have access to.
Right.
And sometimes at the end of the day, there are some people, for example, like medias, that sure, your solo might be able to shoot the fuck out of whatever it might be on the street. But imagine what happens if someone like Fiona Hayes catches footage of you doing that shit. You're
right.
You have to look at it from not just the combat end, but also look at like some of the social power or utility that comes from some of these people improving their role abilities.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. I think that there's certain roles as well that, like, for one reason or another, if they're trying to achieve a particular goal with their character, and that goal isn't served by their role ability going up, that's okay. Because, like, that doesn't make them a less effective edge runner. It just makes them less effective at whatever that role in specific is trying to accomplish. Because, like, for example, an exec might be happy at rank 4. They might not want a second backup, or they might not care to expand to get that extra insurance or whatever. Like, those things may not be necessary. And if it's not, all power to them. Maybe that's as an edge runner, they aren't leaning against their role to like do the things the role does, right? They might be just leaning on their raw skill as like a gunfighter or something, and like be able to do that enough that they just like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep pumping my evasion skill base and my martial arts skill base and my whatever, and now I can just do stuff. That's what Wei did season 1. I think when we finished, I think Wei was only like rank 5, but he was still toe to toe with some of the best things I could throw at him. It was like really, really scary to throw things against Wei, because most of the time he demolished them in a single turn.
And understand sometimes with certain roles, like solo, it's one of those that your combat skills are going to always take precedent in some cases. But the thing is with solos, you should show what happens when a higher rank solo comes in and just with the power of their higher rank solo abilities, just hand them their ass. I've shown that to some solos before that just continue to neglect being solo rank 4 when a rank 6 solo came out of nowhere. It just kept punching through their armor again and again and again and again. Because one, their aim was real stinking good, and two, with 6 points you get a +1 to your aim, plus you're good, plus you're really good already with shoulder arms, so you're punching holes, and then you add that other 3 damage into your spot weakness. Oh, you can make a mess out of lower ranked solos pretty quickly. And then some of these solos were like, oh, wow, okay, I need to up this, especially for like melee solos. You are missing out on some real good stuff if you just skip over it.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's something to be said too about sometimes players just don't recognize how powerful boosting their role rank is. Because solo as an example, they don't think about the fact that, well, with that extra point in solo's, combat awareness, you're just like, all right, well, like, you're adding 1 over here to your martial arts as an example. But what you could be adding is just a +1 to all of your melee or all of your weapons or attack skills. Yeah, like any attack roll you make with a weapon or even like martial arts or brawling, like this point over here gives you a +1 to everything. So they have to sit there and do the math on like whether that's worth it or not. Because in some cases they might not think it is. Because they're like, yeah, except all I ever do is martial arts. Or all I ever do is shoot an assault rifle. Or, whatever. They're going to be looking at like, this is what I do. This is my shtick. So I'd rather get better at doing my shtick than to focus on this other thing that really doesn't give me any benefit for the increased cost. Because it is expensive to level your role rank.
It is.
So that's another thing where it's like, how worth it is it for me to level the role rank if I'm only using it for like 1 or 2 skills and that getting the benefit through that way, and because like med techs, I feel like run into that problem a lot.
Well, actually, I was going to bring up med techs. I had a med tech who, they upped their paramedic, but as soon as time came around, they were only rank 4. They put 2 into pharma to get, speed, heal, and stim. They got their cryo pump, and then, they got their 2 points in the surgery. They couldn't reattach a leg to save their life. They were stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes you have to look at these roles, and, you got to understand, yes, they are expensive. They're expensive for a reason. Like, literally, solos. Maybe you are super accurate. Cool. But sometimes you are not doing enough damage. What if I told you there was a way to have a nice guaranteed extra chunk of damage that will help you get through that armor?
Yep.
And sure, you could put all 4 of your points into fumble recovery. Cool. Great. You got that. But when you're shooting 4d6 and, the tomb in front of you is wearing heavy armor jack and your bullets keep bouncing because you are not doing enough damage, maybe you should up your solo points so you can dump a little extra over into, spot weakness. Rocker Boys. Rocker Boys, you have this whole well of resources at your beck and call. And I see some Rocker Boys neglect it for all their skills, and then they start wondering, well, why is this other Rocker Boy, how are they getting their hands on this shit? Or how is this fixer able to grab this, but I can't?
Some powerful people become your fans, and all of a sudden they're handing over prototypes and shit to you if they like you enough.
And, I'm going to look at this from the fact that, I'm playing Skimmer, a fixer.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta look at some of the soft skills that you gain. Skimmer is able to get along perfectly with currently the cultural ins and outs of your immediate neighborhood, including local gangs. So any local gangs of her area, she gets along with great. She gets along well with one other culture and gains another language, and then becoming a rank 5 fixer soon, she'll be able to get along with 2 more cultures on top of what she has and gain another language as well. You learn to blend in with secret societies really late as a fixer. Nomads, all right? Sure. Mechanically, you gain, more upgrades for your vehicles, or you gain more vehicles. But we also look at this from the narrative aspect. A rank 10 nomad, you are like up there in the leadership of your crew, of your pack.
Mm-hmm.
You are trusted with all these vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What else do we look at? Execs. You know, if you're living in a Beaverville house as an exec, you are definitely not, just, middle management, trying to scrape up a paycheck. You've made it pretty well. You're kind of in that upper echelon at this point.
Yep. Because that's starting at like rank 7, I think they get access, or 8.
Yep, you get it at rank 7. Rank 6, you get Trauma Team Silver. The company thinks you're so important that you need Trauma Team.
That's where I am. And that's why my company is probably going to love me leading them eventually.
To the medias that keep getting frustrated that your stories just don't stick because you don't get enough evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And, your contacts are really thin here and there. You need to bump up your credibility. It'll get you some real substantial rumors as well.
Yep, it all matters. Like, role abilities always are impactful. It's always good to upgrade them. But I will also agree with the crowd that says some roles need it more than others.
Yep.
To be effective at the role. Netrunners are like the prime example of that, where it's like, it's so hard as a netrunner to ever justify putting points into anything but interface, solely because that's your shtick. That's what you do. Only you can use it, and it is so integral to like the whole net side of your abilities. And I mean, even quick hacking now, you really want to have high interface to execute harder quick hacks more easily.
Techs. I know you can just upgrade the tech skill in question, but you have this whole pool of resources that you can divvy out that will improve your upgrades or your fabrication, or give you the ability to invent well.
Yep. And Mark, just to tell you something real quick, you're technically not wrong in saying that you can't fake it with any other skill. However, a decent complementary skill that you can use as a netrunner to get another attempt is cryptography.
Yep.
That is like one that gets used quite a lot because you understand computer code and things like that, and can then use that to help you decipher a password or something. So that is something where you do have some supporting skills that like netrunners specifically can make a ton of use out of in their roles functions. It's just a matter of how your GM likes to do things. But I know, like, I've called in Neon Inferno for cryptography roles to like compensate for a bad backdoor check, for example.
And I suppose even for lawmen, you guys, your guys' roll ability, it really does need a buff. I hope you guys do get a buff. But I would like to look at some of the soft skills that you have, or like soft abilities that you gain when you rank up. Because no measly security guard working for ABC company is going to just be able to simply call in C-SWAT.
Yeah.
You gotta
take that call serious.
You gotta have some pull in the department to be calling in the boys like that.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. Well, Diamond, I think we're pretty much close to time here.
Yeah. So, again, if you guys enjoy the podcast, please subscribe, whether it be on Spotify, YouTube. Check us out here on Twitch when we're broadcasting at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Eastern.
Yep. And of course, as always, folks, be safe out there. You can message us at wireheadspod@googlegroups.com leave a message in the comment section of the video if you have a question, because we are always looking for questions. And as always, thank you for your support. We're on episode 15, and hopefully we have many more episodes ahead of us. Soon I'm going to be getting the final logistics lined up. We'll be having an interview with Tomas within the next month here. And then, of course, I've also got Rob Mulligan on the line as well. So we'll be we'll be talking with Rob from Cybernation Uncensored as well here pretty soon. And we'll probably find other members of the community to reach out to. Hopefully, maybe another interview with someone from Artal at some point.
Yeah. No, I think it could be fun to have the other Rob Barefoot, on the line, because I know we both have known him for a long time, since before he was an Artal employee.
I kind of want to talk to him about, his time before being an Artal employee as well.
Yeah,
I do.
His content creation and stuff, because for those of you who don't know, Rob Barefoot was once Dice TTRPG, and he still posts under that name every now and then, but he's very, very much an Artal employee now. So, but yeah, it'd be fun to interview him and get a feel for kind of his take on things, and to talk with him about some stuff.
In case you missed it, the interview with Cody Pondsmith about Shadow Scar and all sorts of his development at Artal, it's out there over on Emmerron's channel. But until then, Chooms, we'll see you next week. But for now, have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Goodbye.